Hey, it's Matt. We're live. We are ready to rock and roll. It is Friday afternoon, 2:31 now here in the Denver, Colorado area. And it was interesting because I just had to share something with you, and so decided to do it Facebook Live today, this afternoon. Just had this little bit of extra energy based on this document that I came across just actually 2 days ago. So I've been going through this, I don't know, kind of purging exercise in my life. Just, I don't know, simplifying things, this kind of minimalist approach. And what I find, I mean, you look at the science behind it too, but when you take away clutter from your life, it just opens up possibility, right? So your mind can be clear and you can, I don't know, just tap into the creativity, all sorts of great stuff. So one of the areas that I've been kind of cleansing, if you will, is my computer and going through all these old files. And first and foremost, it's been fascinating just to look at the journey of when I started this business officially 6 years ago, which is a decade, right? And 10 years actually that I've been developing this and officially launched 6 years ago. It's fascinating to see where I came from and where I'm at today. So it's so interesting to always go back and look at that. But I came across this one document that really took me back to a number of years ago. And specifically, I had the opportunity to move over to Switzerland and live there for 3 years total, which was a phenomenal experience. And for those of you who know a little bit about my background, I got the itch to go live overseas again because after finishing up Division I college baseball here in the United States, I had the opportunity, to go play for the Wiener Neustadt Diving Ducks, which is in Wiener Neustadt, Austria, just south of Vienna. Tremendous experience, but living over in Europe gave me this itch to go back again. And so when I left baseball and started my career with Ernst & Young, actually, I'm an auditor. I think the furthest cry from an auditor right now being a speaker and coach. But I had kind of let them know the first day I walked in, I said, listen, at some point during my career with you, I want to go live overseas. And I want to live there for an extended period of time. So I let it be known kind of the first day, and then the rest is history, as they say. So about 3 years into my career with EY, I had an opportunity to move over to Zurich, Switzerland. I was married 2 weeks before we moved there. My wife, born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska. We met in Kansas City, Missouri. She was the one who said yes to marrying me and decided to go on this adventure with me. I signed a 3-year agreement with the firm at that point, which typically international assignments are around on average 18 months. I decided to sign on for 3 years and just really kind of see what would happen with this. So 2 weeks after getting married, my wife and I headed over to Zurich to begin our lives together as a married couple. And it turned out to be one of the most incredible, the way I describe it is that is where I had the most personal and professional growth in my life. It's where I grew the most. The only other place that I've grown this much is starting my own business. But Zurich was really kind of just cutting my way into like what developing myself was all about. And so today I wanted to share with you kind of 10 lessons I learned from living overseas, because I believe it's so important, it's so vital that if you have the opportunity to move to any country or any part of a country that perhaps you haven't experienced before, then you need to do it. You must do it. It opens your eyes to possibility. It opens your eyes to different cultures, different ways of thinking and acting and eating. And it's amazing how it just transforms you. And wherever you return to or wherever you move to next, you're changed, and changed forever, and changed for the better because of what you experience in that foreign country, in that different culture. So if you have never lived overseas or never lived in a different place, I highly recommend getting outside of your comfort zone, going and making it happen. My wife and I mean, that was probably the best way we could have started a marriage, was completely reliant on us as a couple. That was it. She had me, I had her, and we had to make it work together. And so when I share these 10 lessons with you, I'll obviously share quite a few stories with you and give you some context, but then I want to really challenge you to implement what you learned today. It can be applicable to literally every area of life that you have. So without further ado, and these are in no, honestly, particular order, except for the last one, as you will see, but these are just things that really resonated with me and popped up, and I just knew I had to share with you today. So the first thing, and what I'll hold up here that you should be able to read, is that my way is not the only way. It was two stories I want to share with you. One thing if you know me, I'm a fairly, I don't know, stubborn person, right? I've got my kind of ways of thinking, as we all do, right? There's a certain way to attack a process or this part of a business deal or a marriage or whatever. And I have my opinions. Everybody has their opinions. But what I found right away was that the statement of, my way was not the only way, came to pass, in that my way is a way, but it's not the only way. What I found quickly is that some of the Swiss individuals that I worked with that were on my team, and keep in mind I was working for people from literally all over the world. I mean, you name the country, there was somebody there in Zurich working from there, and I had the opportunity to work with them every day. But what I found quickly is, like, I would kind of think they were going to approach a problem, to a process or issue a certain way, and they would come back with something that I had never even thought of before. I mean, completely outside the box, completely different. And it kind of blew me away, actually, just at how different they thought than me. But yet at the end of the day, what I also found out was they got to the same answer, the same point. And my leadership changed completely because as a leader, you have to allow some freedom with your people, right? Yes, your way might be super efficient and super effective, and you can teach that way to different people, but allowing this freedom for them to kind of think about, like, how they would approach something different, and how they'd approach a problem, an issue, and letting them discover with your guidance the right answer, because ultimately that's what's important at the end of the day. So I had numerous situations come up where I thought they would approach something one way and it would be completely different. And you know what? It's okay. It was perfectly fine. Like I said, we got to the same answer. The other kind of story I want to tell is my wife, Shannon. She was a teacher for 4th and 5th grade over in Zurich during the time that we lived there, and taught at one of the international schools. And she was telling me about kind of the difference between the American style of learning and then what they call the international style, this international baccalaureate, this IB program that she taught in. And the typical American way of teaching, and I'm generalizing, I know, but the typical way is that for a math problem, it's like, okay, you have this problem, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, right? Now go repeat it on this problem and this problem and this problem. You just repeat the same way to solve it. And with this IB, this International Baccalaureate program, what she was taught was that you put the problem on the board, and then you turn to the class and you ask them, how would you solve this? Because the creativity of the individuals, even children sitting in the room, they could attack that problem multiple ways and still get to the same answer. It's amazing when you kind of take that step back and understand that my way is not the only way. But how do I guide others around me to be creative, to flourish, and ultimately get to the right answer that we want to get to? So that was my first lesson that I want you to think about, of what are the ways you could expand yourself by learning from others. All right. The second lesson that I learned from living over in Europe was at least attempt to learn. At least attempt to learn. Now, this one actually came from when I had returned to the States, and I was asked to be on a panel at one of my alma maters. And it was a panel of business people who had international experience, international business symposium. And as I was sitting up there, one of the students had a great question and asked, do you believe it's important to learn the language based on the country that you are in? Like, do you have to be fluent? And this one CEO of this pretty large company spoke up and said, absolutely not. You don't need to learn the language. English is the world's language. They should know it. at which point I about jumped out of my seat because I completely disagreed with that. And I voiced my opinion right then and right there. And because it was based on my experience, having lived overseas, both in Austria and in Switzerland, that when you at least attempt to learn, when you attempt to relate to the people, when you attempt to just understand their language, their culture, the way they behave, like where they came from, the history of where you're at, it's amazing the quality of the relationship that you can build, the trust that you can build with the individuals that you're interacting with. And when the CEO said that, if I know you don't need to learn the language, it blew me away, because I'm one that my entire business now and my entire existence at this point has been built on relationships. Like, I want to build great relationships with people that last a very long time. But if you don't put in the time to learn what really drives them and where they came from, you cannot have a meaningful relationship with people. And I don't care if that's your employees, if it's a peer at a company, if it is a client of yours. It's going that extra step to understand where they came from, understand their story. That's how true relationships are built. That's why I'm so focused on them. It improves everything once you understand more about people. It's an authentic relationship that you're going after. So I'm a big believer, wherever you go, wherever you travel, you need to at least attempt to learn the language. I've got one story. It's probably not appropriate for this. It's not that bad, but I'll tell it to you anyway. When I was living in Switzerland, I had this good friend, Malta Kriegel, if you're out there. Shout out to Malta. He's, well, probably having a drink and going to bed soon. But so Malta and I, he's German, and he and I would meet for a few beers, and we would speak only German. So he was kind of my German, teacher, if you will. And before one of our sessions, I sent him a note at work. We worked for the same company. I sent him a note and said, yeah, I'm excited for tonight. And, I'll see you at 7 o'clock or whatever. And I was trying to search for the word excited, right? Because I didn't know what it was in German. So I did a dictionary search and stuff like that and sent him the email all in German, in keeping with our little agreement. And he wrote back in English and he said, well, it'll be fun to see you tonight, but I can't say that I'm aroused to see you. So the one word that I pick from out of the German dictionary for excited is aroused, and a complete mistake. Clearly, I was attempting to learn it, but I used to tell that, he was laughing about it. I used to tell that story to all the Swiss and German speaking individuals that I worked with, and they would just crack up laughing. But again, it was about building that relationship with them. So you have to be able to relate people and go further than just a business transaction. Gosh, it's just not fun, just to keep it at that surface level. So that was the second lesson, at least attempt to learn. So I wonder if there's people in your life, or maybe countries you're traveling to, where you can go a little bit deeper and attempt to learn a little bit more about that individual. I bet it'll change a few things for you. All right. Lesson number 3 that I wanted to share with you is that I learned is kind of this fix it now or fix it right mentality. Fix it now or fix it right. This is one that was born out of frustration for me. I'm not, my wife will tell you I'm not the most patient person in the world, and it's like some of my colleagues and coworkers will tell you the same thing of like, when it's time to do something, it's like, let's get it done now. Let's go. And that can be a good thing, and it can be a bad thing. It can be a great thing because we're going to accomplish a lot of different things along the way, right? But it also can be a bad thing because if you go out of the gate too fast without a plan, chances are the result that you expect is not going to show up. So when I was in Switzerland, one of my biggest clients was one of the biggest banks in the world. I happened to be headquartered in Zurich. And I found that things moved pretty slow at that bank. I mean, sometimes painfully slow. And me not being the most patient person in the world, I would get very frustrated by this because I'm like, listen, like, we have an opportunity here to to do this faster, be like kind of the first to market here. And we're talking like accounting here. My goodness, right? First to market for accounting, right? Not the sexiest thing in the world. But the fact was, I always wanted to move faster. And over those 3 years, what I started to realize is there was a purpose to how they would approach things. And when they would involve different parties from different functions, to make sure that the decision that they were making was the right one. And what I found was that my gut reaction to go fast, it had to be tempered. And I had to instead adopt this mentality of like, what business information, or what information do I need to gather so that I can make sure that either going fast or going slow or going at whatever pace is the right thing to do, because I want that expected result. It's not go so slow that the result never happened, because you actually never make things happen. But it's this balance, it's this dance between what information you need to gather and how fast you go, with the ultimate focus on the result you're trying to achieve. So with everything that I approach now, I still make mistakes where I want to go fast and furious, like the movie, right? Like, here we come, like fast cars out of the gate, guns blazing, here we go, kind of shoot now, aim later type mentality. But I've also been very blessed by getting surrounded by people who understand how to kind of taper me off that and temper me a bit and be like, well, Matt, hold on a minute. Let's take that step back. I don't think you have the information you need. Let's make sure we have it so we can make the appropriate decision. And, you know, in my business with different teammates I have, like Courtney, you'll see her doing some amazing things from my marketing perspective as a great example. She's the one that keeps me very grounded and like, okay, Matt, I know you want this posted. I know you want it now, but let's make sure we have a plan. So it's all about this balance of now or right, and surrounding yourself with great people. So I wonder for you, if there's something maybe you're going a little bit faster than you should at the moment, then maybe you need to gather a little more information. And for those of you who tend to overanalyze everything, what's one bit of action you can take now to move a little bit closer to your goal? Stop the analysis and start doing. But that's one of the biggest lessons I learned working for one of the biggest banks in the world during my time there. All right, that's number 3. What I learned at number 4 is right here. We're living in Europe. Building trust takes time and is driven by the actions you take. When I first moved to Switzerland, I was taking over ultimately for a woman who had been in country for a couple of years and only had about 6 months or 9 months left before she would move back to her home country, and I would kind of officially take over. And I remember the very first meeting I had with one of the clients, and I showed up with her by my side. She's literally right next to me. And she introduces me to the client, who happened to be a Swiss person. And that person shook my hand and said, you know, nice to meet you. And then she went on to explain a couple things. And that person never once looked at me. Not once. He instead kept looking at this other person, this woman on the team. And I remember I was like, why is he not looking at me? Why is he not looking at me? And it kind of bugged me a little bit. And what I learned over time was that, you know, at its core, like, he didn't trust me. He didn't know who I was. I was just some person who moved over from the United States and was there to work, and he didn't know the quality of my work. He didn't know if I was knowledgeable, if I could do the job, how long I'd be there. He didn't know, and he didn't trust me. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, not making eye contact with people is a good or bad thing, but what was fascinating to me was fast forward 3 years, and I'm about to leave country to move from Switzerland back to the United States. And I went to introduce the same person to the new incumbent who's going to take over for me. That person would only look at me. He did not once look at the other person. And right then and there was this realization that I had built trust with this person. I had built trust with him, that he understood what I could do and how I could do it, and the value that I brought. And we had built this amazing relationship where he knew me and I knew him. It was just fabulous, right? But it was this role reversal that, I don't know, it was one of those experiences where you kind of float out of body almost. And when he kept staring at me and wouldn't look at the other person, I was just kind of laughing inside in a way of like, man, I did it. Like I pulled this off. Like, this is amazing to look back 3 years and just see this whole thing come together. So it was such a cool thing to see. But see, the fact is that building trust takes time. And I think sometimes, there's stereotypes of different cultures and stuff like that, like, I don't know, Americans, like, we're your best friend and we haven't even met you yet. And, like, we give you instant trust. But the best relationships in life take time to build, and trust is a key component of it. And it was all about action. So with that client, it was about me proving myself to him that he could trust me, that he could rely upon me to deliver upon my word and deliver the results. And that was something that just always stuck with me, that if you focus on delivering value, doing the right things, approaching life with great principles and values attached to the action that you take, trust will take care of itself. Don't worry out of the gate that you have to be trusted by everyone on your team. If you do the right things, the results will take care of themselves, right? It's like I'm pointing the wrong way. Yeah, there we go. Action equals results. Action done the right way will build trust with those around you. So that was a big lesson for me of building trust takes time and is driven by the actions you take. So another kind of big thing that I loved learning about when I was in Europe. All right. So the next one, number 5, I want to talk to you about is know your audience and simplify the message. Whenever you live overseas where there's a different language spoken, you have to understand who you're talking to and how to talk to them and how to make it simple. And I remember my wife teaching at one of the international schools, because I had to deal with this every day, right? I mean, English was actually the official language of this bank, even though it was headquartered in Switzerland. But yet you're working with people all over the world. So I don't care if you're English, American, if you're from India, if you are from China, from like Switzerland, from like name the country, there's going to be some sort of barrier, whether I'm speaking German or someone else is speaking English. There's barriers that we have to come through. So how do we best communicate with those around us? It goes back to some of those things of like the trust and all the things I talked about earlier, but it's how do you simplify the message based on what you're trying to achieve. And my wife, she was working at this international school. It was an English-speaking expat school, but children from all over the world. And a couple things I found fascinating. One is that she had a Korean boy and a French boy who started the class at the beginning of the year and spoke no English. Within 6 months, these 2 boys were fluent in English, which is baffling to me. It's amazing, amazing. If you're watching today and you speak multiple languages, you have my ultimate respect. I can't do it. I've never trained myself to do it. I've never invested the time to do it. I know enough German to be dangerous, but it's amazing that you can speak multiple languages. It's a phenomenal skill set that you have. But she was telling the story about, she was teaching this math lesson to the class, and she was specifically talking to this French boy. And she had, standing in front of his desk, had explained this math lesson, and she goes, she said, Matt, when somebody's looking at you and they give you that look where you just know they have no clue what you're talking about. Like they don't understand at all. And she's like, I'm getting that look from this boy. He's like, you're speaking a foreign language, because frankly she was. So she kind of took a step back, metaphorically speaking, and said, how do I simplify the message to explain this to this young man? And as she was about to approach him again and explain the assignment, she gets this little tap on her shoulder from behind. And she turns around. I mean, keep in mind, this is like a 4th grader. And it's this little girl who's French. And she says, oh, Mrs. Phillips, like, I'll translate for you. What would you like me to tell him? And so she tells him, and this young 4th grade French girl translates in French like exactly. And he goes, oh, oui, oui, and boop, busts out the math problem. No issue at all. But it was such that learning experience of like knowing your audience, Who am I talking to right now? Who's sitting in front of me? And how do I best communicate and simplify that message for that person? Such a valuable lesson. They talk all the time. You should, they've looked at the different debates and presidential debates in the past, and whoever speaks at like a fifth grade level tends to win the election, where when we try to use these fancy words, these complicated messages, it doesn't work. People don't understand. And frankly, if you say a word I don't understand, I'm going to feel kind of dumb, right? But it's simplify the message. What's the key item you need to get across? And how do you best approach this person that you're sitting with across from right now? Amazing lesson that I learned from that fourth grade French girl of how to know your audience, simplify the message, and frankly, have a boatload of courage to do just that. I mean, my wife is still blown away to this day at that story, and that's why I love telling it so much. So know to your audience, simplify the message. Learn how to make them successful, right? All right, that's 5. That is 5. We are cranking along here. All right, so the next thing that I learned about living for 3 years in Switzerland and about 3 months when I played in the Bundesliga in the first league in Austria, but especially living in Switzerland with my wife, enjoy the experience. Enjoy your experience. The very first meal that my wife and I shared in Switzerland was at this little Italian restaurant. Well, it was kind of a big Italian restaurant, which we later found out was like a chain. And that's okay. We didn't know. We were uninformed at the time. But it was actually during a period when my wife and I were not married yet. We had flown over to pick out our apartment, our flat, pick out furniture, do all that stuff. And then we actually returned to the U.S., got married and all that stuff. So very first meal at this Italian restaurant, and it took forever, like an hour and a half, which from what we're used to like 45 minutes, bing, bang, boom, in and out. We're busy. We got stuff to do, even though we don't have anything to do, but we have to appear busy. And it took like an hour and a half. And at one point, our waitress disappeared. I no idea where she went. And finally, I'm kind of looking around, and I look over this wall. I can see through this, like, kind of over this wall, and she was sitting there eating dinner. And I'm just like, what in the, like, we want to go. It's been like 45 minutes. We got to go, right? I don't know where we're going to go, but we got to go. And then finally I called somebody else over. They took our check, and we moved on, right? And got out of there. Well, what we learned was that we put zero enjoyment in that time that we had together. Sure, we were talking and enjoying being in Switzerland and having good Italian food and all that stuff, right? But we weren't enjoying the experience. And what someone taught us, one of our friends taught us, was he said, you have to understand that the Europeans have developed this dining experience. It's not going out to eat. It's like we're going for an experience. And that's what we started to learn when we lived there. And towards the end, and frankly, pretty quickly, our average meal when we were out with friends and stuff was on average 3 hours long. And we loved it. And we still try to do that with friends today, even though we live in Colorado now, because it's an experience. And this friend talked about how, listen, like when you show up to dinner, these methods have been tried and tested. I mean, it's amazing. Like if you think about it, right? So you show up, you get seated and you have your aperitif, right? You have your kind of pre-dinner drink. And then after that's done, they bring you some menus and you kind of put your order in. You order your bottle of wine or bottles of wine, and then the main course shows up. And then after you're done with that main course, you either have your kind of after dinner drink or you have your coffee. And that's like every meal. And to get true enjoyment out of it, it can take a long time because you're there to grow relationships, to have great conversation, to truly like dive in and enjoy your meal. And by the way, like you get the perfect amount of food, so you're not, like rolling out of there. You're so bloated and all that stuff. But they created this experience with every dinner that you would go to. And my wife and I we fell in love with it because, first of all, you're with great friends, having a great time, having great wine, great food, and great coffee at the end too. And then you get to walk home. And when you get home, you feel amazing because you've been out in the fresh air and done all this amazing stuff. And so it just brought this deeper appreciation of like everything that you approach in your life, if you decide to look at it, it's an experience that you're going through. It's something that people have spent time to formulate, and for you to appreciate that when you're a guest at someone's house or in a meeting, like or at an event, right? We're putting on, Peter Lynch and I are partnering on an event called the Shift Experience. And it's kind of a different play on a conference. We could have called it the Shift Conference. I come to our conference, but we're like, no, I don't want it to be some same old check the box conference. I want it to be an experience where it's different, and everything, like every little piece of it is choreographed so that people can get the most out of their time there. That's why we wanted to create the Shift Experience. That's the same thing we learned about dinner. So if you're a business owner or if you have clients, I mean, how do you take this and create an experience for people where it's well thought out, well orchestrated, so you can provide tremendous value, right? Where they look at it and they're like, wow, I've never seen anything like that before. But the most important part is to enjoy it, to not rush around like we all do, but to just have some appreciation and gratitude for what has just happened. I mean, that's the beauty in enjoyment. That's what life is all about. We just had right before this, I got a text that, a person close to us is not doing well, and we're sending out, prayers for him and all that. But one thing I know about this individual is he worked a lot. He was very stressed out, and he just retired, and now he's close to his death. And I hope, and I've never asked him this, but I hope that he looks back on his life, and I know it's full of this, but like that he enjoyed the ride, that he had fun, because that's what life is about. And that's why my wife and I both were so thankful that we saw this within eating dinner at a restaurant, or a different individual's house, that you can find enjoyment in everything, that life is an experience, that a simple walk around the neighborhood or a walk down by a lake can just create this joy inside you. So just a different way to live and think about things. So number 6 is enjoy the experience. And I want you to really think about that and figure out how you can squeeze more joy out of your day, out of the time that you have on this earth and in your business. So that's number 6 that I really, really love. Number 7, it's called take a chance. Stand out. Be different. Be willing to go where others are not willing to. It's amazing when you decide to step out of your comfort zone. First of all, how much enjoyment you get, how much growth you experience, but then how you look back at it, and whether it went good or bad, you're like, oh my gosh, that was awesome, right? That was awesome, because it's different. It's like we hear all the time about like, be like the 1%, right? Don't be like the 99%, be like the 1%. Well, the 1%, I don't know, they tend to take chances and stand out, right? Maybe dress a little bit different, look a little different, approach things a little bit different, right? They want to be different. And I have that same drive with what I do every day. I don't want to settle in life. I don't want to have just a marriage. I don't want to just be in okay shape. I don't want to have just a whole hum business that's just fine, right? When you ask me, how you doing, Matt? Fine. No, when you ask me that, I want to be like, I'm great. But it starts with this. It starts with being different. It's differentiating yourself from everybody else. That's why I get so fired up about this mindset and mental toughness work I do, because will tell you, and if you've ever sat with me, I will tell you that the true differentiator in life, the one differentiator, is your mindset. It's what happens between the ears. That it's dealing with your fears and doubts and worries and limiting beliefs. It's getting out of your own way. But it starts with taking a chance, thinking and acting differently than you never have before. And this was brought to light for me at one point when I was with Ernst & Young over in Switzerland. I knew I wanted to get out of the audit world and stuff like that. And it wasn't quite yet the time to jump into speaking and coaching. But I actually interviewed at a big bank when I was over there. And I was interviewing for this accounting job, and was with one of the financial reporting heads and all that stuff, just talking with him. And in walks the chief accounting officer of this massive company, right? One of the top 10 banks in the world, not my client, but another one, walks in the room. The first thing out of his mouth, he said, "You played for the Diving Ducks?" That was the first phrase out of his mouth. First thing out of his mouth, right? That was, "You played for the Diving Ducks?" He had actually seen my resume, my CV, and on it, I put at the bottom that I played in the Bundesliga, the first league, for the Wiener Neustadt Diving Ducks in Wiener Neustadt, Austria. And that stuck out to him so much because it was so different, right? I knew nobody. And I know of like one other person to this date who has actually moved overseas to play baseball. Like in Europe. I don't know anybody else except for this one other person. And I haven't even met that person. I heard about him kind of like secondhand. But because I decided to take this chance, because it was one of the most awkward things. I mean, to leave my family, to move to a country where I didn't speak the language, to live with a host family that I didn't know. I had exchanged some messages and stuff like that, but I didn't really know what I was getting into. And I was one of 2 foreigners allowed on the field at one time. So I was over there, and there was another American who played catcher. But I decided to take this chance anyway. And it almost, actually I decided against the job. It basically landed me the job. Now, obviously, I've got a skill set that goes beyond just, oh, you played for the Diving Ducks, right? That's not like a special credit card that gets you any job in the world, right? Or special pass. But the fact was that because I was different than other people, it made me stand out. So I wonder for you in your business or in your career, or even at home in your relationship with your spouse or partner, with your kids, like, what can you do differently? What chance can you take where when people say like, oh, that's, and fill in your name, that they know that you are different? It starts with taking that first chance and seeing what's going to happen. It's amazing when you step out of your comfort zone, get uncomfortable a little bit, and then watch the downstream impact happen. I mean, I played in Austria in 1999, and that chief accounting officer walked in the door it was probably 2005. So it took 6 years for people to realize that I'd taken this chance and how it potentially made me better. And it was a great, great talking point. So that was the kind of next lesson. The 7th lesson I learned is take a chance, stand out, be different than everyone else. It's amazing. All right. The 8th one I want to talk to you about is confidence, not cockiness. It was really interesting to me. I actually learned this from my client. It was something that blew me away. And now I'm going to try not to bore you here. So you got to stay with me. I'm going to do a little accounting talk at the moment, okay? One of the groups that I was in charge of auditing was the accounting policy group. So again, I'll keep it high level so you don't fall asleep, right? But they would actually set the accounting standard. So every time a new accounting standard would come out, they would analyze it, assess the impact on the bank, on the disclosures, all sorts of stuff that we as investors rely upon, right? If it's a publicly traded company. But we rely upon that. And with most accounting standards that come out, they typically give you around 3 years. I'm generalizing, okay, don't hold me to this, but about 3 years to adopt that standard, right? To have it affect your financial statements and disclosures, okay? All right, that's enough of the accounting talk. So they give you up to 3 years. Well, this client of mine would always be the first to adopt it, like within a year or less, which is called the early adopter, right? And always, without fail, it could have been the most massive like change in the world, and they would be the first to adopt it. Now at that point, I'm like, I don't know, an immature little auditor, and I'm like, I'm like, come on, like you've got 3 years to do this. Like, why are you pushing the envelope so much? Of course, I'm having this discussion with my internal people, not the client. But I never understood it. So they did this time and time again. They would always be first to market. You know what I learned over time? And what I came to appreciate was that they had this mentality where they wanted everyone to look at them and ask, what would they do? What would that bank do? With everything. that they did, every product or service or accounting standard that they would implement. They wanted across the business, every function, they wanted everyone around the world, every other company, every other bank, financial service institution, everybody to look at them and say, what would they do? Because they are the gold standard. They set the bar. That we're going to look at what they did to see if we can replicate them, because they're the first movers in the market. Unreal, right? When you think about that, right? This confidence that they exuded, because they wanted to be seen as like the best. They wanted to set the bar. Now, there's this aura about them, that there's this borderline, this gray area of cockiness, right? That you can be seen as cocky because you want to be the first to market. You want people to look to you. But it was a confidence in themselves that they knew they had the ability to do it. They wanted to do it. They had this desire, this passion, this drive within them. And that was just how they acted. That's what happened. And what they didn't do was listen to everybody else who told them they were cocky. They said, no, we are confident in what we do and how we do it. We've got the best people in the world, and this is how we're going to approach this. They focused on the confidence. They didn't worry about the cockiness. They focused on how do we be as confident in ourselves and our team. So this is something that I took to my teams when I was working in corporate world. When I was running teams, I wanted every team within that company to look at us and say, what would they do? How would they implement that? How would they approach this process or this project? I wanted us to be that gold standard. And it's the same thing I do in my business. Like, I don't want to be like everybody else, but I want to set the standard. So the way I deliver, the way I support right behind the scenes, the way I make sure that I'm creating an experience for you, even though you hire me, I want to make it great for you, whether we're talking a speech or a workshop or one-on-one coaching. I want you to understand that I'm invested as well in that. So that was a huge one of like, have this confidence about you. Don't worry about the cockiness, but be confident in what you can do, in everything that you do. Unreal when that action follows, right? That was another big lesson that I learned from my client while living overseas. The next thing, before I end with number 10, is, this was something I learned very early on. It's not about you. Make sure your loved ones are happy. So let me translate it. It's not about you. It's about everyone else. That's the truth, okay? And if we keep our eye focused on others around us, our family, our friends, the people that we work with, fill in the blank, right? If we focus on others, that will drive our success, hands down. And this was made it was right in my face when I first started interviewing to go over and take this job over in Zurich. Again, like I said, I was working in Kansas City, and about 2 years and 2 years and 5 months into my working with the firm, that's when this whole process started kicking off of me looking to go overseas. And so I started talking with partners in the Kansas City office and started connecting with people in New York and then over in Switzerland eventually. And then I set up interviews with the partners in Switzerland, and they wanted to know lots about me and stuff like that, except I found out they didn't really care about me so much. They kept asking questions about my fiance, who was about to become my wife, Shannon. They kept asking about her. And they kept asking, like, well, what is she going to do? And how's she going to keep busy? And it was like literally question after question. So every interview I'd have with these different partners, they'd keep asking about her. And I'm like, what is the deal? Like, aren't they hiring me for this? And what I came to find out was they're not worried about me. I'm going to be busy. This is true of everyone they bring over. I'm going to work every day. I'm interacting with people. I'm going to have tons of projects to work on. I'm going to be just fine. I'm going to integrate just fine. They're worried about the spouse, because an unhappy spouse, right, male or female, unhappy spouse means that you're coming home early. So if you sign up for an 18-month assignment, you're probably coming home at 9 or 10 months. If you sign for a 3-year assignment like we did, you're still probably coming home at 9 or 10 months. It was about my wife, my soon-to-be wife. That's what they cared about, because they knew that if I focused on making her successful when we moved to Switzerland, that I helped her become busy, that she was able to explore and meet people and get engaged and become part of the culture there, then their investment in me would be worth it, right? That I would stay, that it would work, that I'd get to experience that as well, and they'd get to benefit from that as well. But it brought into this whole thing of like, it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about like all of you watching this today, right? It's not about me. I want to share these kind of lessons learned from Europe so that hopefully you can benefit from them, so you can implement some of these things in your life, or think about the way you can implement them in your life. And the same thing was true, is like, it was all about my wife, of how I'm going to make her so successful. Because I will tell you, at about the 9-month mark, we were on the verge of coming back. My wife will tell you that. I was at work, happy as a little lark, interacting with different people. She was sitting in an apartment all day, aside from her German lesson she took like once a week, staring at walls. And by the time I got home, she wanted to talk my ear off. I didn't want to talk because I've been talking all day, right? But she quickly became miserable because she had not established this network. And you know what changed everything? When she started teaching at that international school. Completely transformed everything, because all of a sudden it became about her, right? That she had a purpose behind that. And I'm so thankful, to this day, that we discovered that international school, because my wife has amazing stories to tell. It changed her. I mean, this whole international experience and changed us. But this is something true in my business, right? It's not about me, it's about you. It's how do I be of service? How do I pour into every individual that I come across? And because that's where I know the impact's going to be made. It's about my wife, not me. It's about my kids, not me. And it's hard. It's hard. It's difficult. It's a challenge to look every day and be like, okay, I got to be focused on others, focused on others, focused on others. It's a challenge, and I fall into the trap. I think everyone does. But again, if you've heard me talk about this mindset stuff, this mental toughness stuff, it's not that adversity is going away. You're gonna have those moments where and you have to take care of yourself, right? So there's this balance, right? So you're always taking care of yourself, but sometimes we want to be super, super, super selfish, right? But it's how quickly we can switch that to like, yes, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to make sure I'm healthy. I'm eating right. I'm working out. I'm doing all these things, right? But how do I serve others at a whole nother level? The quicker we get back on track with that, just like all this mindset, this positive mindset stuff, our visualization, all these different techniques I teach, the better off we're going to be, the more impact that you can make. And that's just something that I learned from them interviewing me to go overseas and having experienced that with my wife, is how do I make sure I'm focused on others and not myself? So that's the challenge with this 9th one for you, is how can you think more about the people sitting around you or next to you, or that you're talking to on the phone, to maybe give them a better experience, to maybe ask that one additional question of, how can I help? That's maybe beyond our scope of what we've agreed to here, so they can get the most out of their life as well. It's ultimately about service at the end of the day. So that's number 9. Not about you, right? Certainly not about me. That's all I know. Listen, the last, number 10, that I want to share with you is this right here. Be open to new experiences in life. It will change you forever. Change you forever. Playing baseball in Europe, living and working in Switzerland, having had opportunities to travel for my speaking and coaching business, to work with people in the United States and Europe and kind of all over the world, it has transformed me for the better. But it all started with this openness to experience and to something different, to something that I just absolutely love to do every single day. But it starts with that openness. Being willing to get out of your comfort zone, to do one small thing that can ultimately lead to something bigger. Me moving to Europe in the first place to play baseball, That was a big step. I think a lot of people, most people would say that's a pretty big step to go live with a host family you didn't know, and you didn't speak the language, all that stuff. They think it's a pretty big deal, and it is a big deal. But it also opened me up to an even bigger opportunity and living and working in Switzerland for 3 years with my new bride. And oh, by the way, we had a baby over there. Our oldest daughter, Madeline, was born there. And that was an amazing experience to go through. And then have two more babies back here in the United States. I mean, amazing contrast and difference. And the experiences that my wife and I have had, that I've had in my business. I mean, I was in London, a couple months ago, giving a speech and doing some training. I mean, amazing opportunities, right? That I'm going to get some chance to go to the Asia Pacific region here this year. I mean, it's incredible. But this willingness to step out, to meet people where they're at, to learn about different cultures and people and the challenges that they're going through, and seeing how I can help and be of service to others. Oh my gosh, it's changed me. That baseball experience, living in Zurich, like I said earlier, biggest personal and professional growth I've ever experienced aside from starting this business. That's where I grew as a man, as a husband, as a business person, as a father, as a son. I mean, all these different areas were so impacted by that. My wellness was impacted by that because the Swiss and Austrians, they live this life based on it's wellness, it's holistic. We've got to take care of ourselves. I mean, it's amazing stuff that I've learned, but it all started with being open to a new challenge, this new experience. And you know this. One thing I used to do, I used to discount that experience in Europe and playing baseball in Austria. I'm like, oh yeah, it's just something I did. And I don't walk around being like, oh, look how great I am. That's not the point. The point is that I appreciate that opportunity. I look back at that and I'm like, wow, that was pretty cool that I did that. That was cool. I stepped out, did something different, and it paid off. And some of it was good, some was pretty tough, but overall it was a fabulous experience. And I want you to have this realization that you've stepped out a ton, and maybe you just don't realize it today, that you've done things differently in the past, that you've taken those chances. And I want you to take a pause and, if one of your exercises after this is to write down all the risks you've taken and experiences you've had, go do that. Write it down. Because you'll be amazed at the things that you've accomplished that you're not giving yourself credit for. Once you've done that, you can use that as fuel, as kind of fire behind what can be next for you and what opportunity you can take on further. And I want to challenge you to leverage that and then go into that next thing. Continue to be open to those opportunities. It'll change you. It's changed me. So listen, those are my top 10 kind of lessons learned from living over in Zurich, Switzerland. I told you that my way is not the only way. At least attempt to learn, like the language and the people you're working with. You can fix it now or fix it right. Building trust takes time, as driven by actions you take. About knowing your audience and simplifying the message. About enjoying your experience, taking the chance, standing out from the rest, having this confidence in what you're doing on a daily basis, understanding it's not about you, it's about everyone else, and finally being open to new experiences to change your life. I hope you enjoyed the little Facebook Live. I know we'll post this a couple other places. Hey, here's my ask of you. I would love to do a couple things. One is, please go like our Pro Athlete Advantage page on Facebook. I'd also love you to go to our Instagram page. It's Pro Athlete Advantage. Go to my LinkedIn page, Matt-Phillips-Speaker. Go check out the different resources. Go to our YouTube page as well. Go to the website, proathleteadvantage.com. Get to know us. Watch the videos. I'm here to help. I'm here to serve you and help with your mindset, your mental toughness, your mental and emotional resiliency, to help you get out of your own way, to deal with those fears and doubts and limiting beliefs. So please go to those pages. Please share this Facebook Live, this video with your friends and family and colleagues. I mean, let's spread the word. Let's spread the news a little bit. And, the other ask I'll have of you, like in the comments below, which one of these that I talked about resonated with you most? What action are you going to take from it? I would absolutely love to engage with you on here, to hear your stories, and to see how I can help however I can. So please do those two things. I'm so fired up. Man, in about a month's time, I'll be having this brand new online program coming out where we get to dive into all these mindset techniques that I'm teaching business leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners around the world. So be on the lookout for that. I'm so pumped to announce that and to get that rocking and rolling as I continue to help people around the world and do what I believe I was put on this earth to do. So go make a massive difference in your day, and I hope you just crush it. And I just know you're going to do great things. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Talk soon.